Hello and welcome back to my channel where we take you beyond the buzzword, beyond the basics, and beyond the BS to help you really master marketing agility. Today we are returning to our topic of agile meetings and how to make them work harder for you. We've talked about the daily stand-up. I'll link that video here if you want to go back and refresh your memory on how stand-ups are supposed to work. Today we are going into arguably the other half of the most important agile meetings that you could possibly have, and that is the retrospective, affectionately known as the retro. Now this is a meeting that's all about process, so you can imagine that agile nerds really like it. Unfortunately, it tends to be one that we don't have in a lot of agile marketing implementations. It just gets mysteriously omitted, which is terrible because retrospectives, when they're done well, are amazing tools for continuous improvement. So the problem we need to start grappling with today in this video is when the retrospectives either don't happen or they happen but they're not great. And that's really just the signal that eventually they won't happen. And so today we need to talk about those common retrospective issues in marketing and how we can tackle them deliberately and systematically as agile marketing ninjas that we are. Before we get into that topic for today, however, quick favor to ask of you. The things that help me know that these videos are useful and helpful to my fellow agile marketers out there is the signal of like or subscribe or comment. So any sort of little engagement that you can offer up will help me know that I am on the right track, and then you will get more videos like this one. So it's win-win for everybody. Much appreciated. Okay, let's talk about retros. First problem is when they don't happen. This one's easy to solve. Schedule your retrospectives. Right now, you just pause the video and go schedule them. No, but seriously, they need to be happening, and they need to be happening on a regular and fairly frequent basis. If you are using sprints or frequent iterations, after every sprint or iteration, you have a retrospective. This is how sprints are supposed to work. We run one and then we stop and figure out how it worked or didn't work and what we can do to make it better. This is what retrospectives are for. If we run sprint after sprint after sprint without a retrospective, we may be repeating the same mistakes over and over again that could have been avoided. Don't do that. Have a retro. Even if you're not running sprints, retrospectives are equally important. They can happen in more of a just-in-time kind of way if you want them to. So it could be whenever we release a campaign or we finished a total of 3 projects, now we have a retro. Whatever your trigger is, you can have a retrospective based on some kind of event. That can work for more mature agile teams. If you're younger, I'm thinking like a year or less you've been using agile, just put them on the calendar at a recurring cadence. That's going to keep you honest and make sure that you're touching base often enough to continuously improve your process. Again, a 2-week time box is a pretty good recurrence for a retrospective. We don't want them happening only every 4 to 6 weeks because we've forgotten all the good and bad stuff that happened within our process in that amount of time. And so a retro is not going to be nearly as useful. So every couple of weeks, just schedule it. Put it on the calendar. It's non-negotiable. Make your retro happen. The second problem with a retro is that it's happening, but it's not doing its job. We're getting in a room every couple of weeks and like staring at each other and kind of complaining about things, but nothing seems to be getting better. This is a badly run retrospective, and those are the ones that are gonna get dropped. We all need an extra hour back in our day, so cutting the retro seems like a great way to get that back. It's not. Your retro just needs to be working harder. Couple of ways to do that. Stay long enough. Stay in the room for the hour. What happens a lot of times is we schedule our retro for like 3 p.m. on a Friday. That in and of itself, not a problem. Sometimes this is a good end of the week activity. But if we do that and we all show up in the room and somebody says, hey, how was the sprint this week? Or how was Agile going for everybody? What do you guys think? We all sort of think for a second and look at each other and nobody really says anything. Or somebody goes, yeah, this is fine. That was pretty good. And everyone goes, yeah, it was pretty good. And then we say, okay, good meeting, everyone. Have a great weekend. And we go home early. Going home early is good, but not having that kind of a retro is not good. That's not an effective retrospective meeting. We all need to be in the room for an hour. It can take a long time for some of these conversations to emerge and these really hard topics to get the attention that they need. So we're in the room for an hour, period, end of story. If you're in the room for the hour and you're still not getting what you need from your retrospective meeting, a couple other things you can do to improve them. One is have a dedicated facilitator. Have somebody there to actually run the meeting and make sure that everyone is staying on task, the key objectives are being met. And this could be somebody within the team. On my small team that I did when I was first starting out, we would rotate responsibilities for running the retro. If you have a dedicated Scrum Master or an Agile coach or an Agile lead in your organization that you can tap into, snag them and get them to do it. They'll be great at it. If not, you may need to borrow somebody. But if the retro is stalling out, try a dedicated facilitator who really understands what a retro is for, and that could really help. The second thing is to make sure that you are accessing the brains of everybody in the room. My fellow introverts out there can attest. Sometimes it's tough to speak up in a crowd when you are an introverted person. So give the introverts some time to percolate and to collect their thoughts before you force them to dive into discussion. This is super easy to do. Whatever the topic is, whatever question you're asking the room, give everyone 5 to 7 minutes to just write on their sticky notes first. Everybody in the room is going to brain dump onto sticky notes for 5 to 7 minutes. Make a big pile of stickies and then put them up on the wall somewhere. And then we can move into discussion. This has given the introverts plenty of time to participate in the way that they're comfortable with. This is giving the extroverts time to kind of process some of their thoughts as well, and then they can jump into the discussion and they're likely to continue kind of ideating on their original thoughts as the discussion progresses, but this is going to help everybody be a meaningful part of the retro. Third thing is not to keep having the same retrospective over and over again. The standard format for a retrospective is stop, start, continue. What are we going to stop doing? What are we going to start doing? And what are we going to continue doing? This is a great, easy entry point to retros, and you can use it, no problem, when you're just starting out. But you don't want to do that every single retro for a year. People get tired of having that same conversation. It's not going to access new ways of thinking about problems and solutions with your team. So let me give you just a couple of other alternatives. They're the same kind of concept. You create these buckets like stop, start, and continue, and then you ask people to identify options that fit in each of these buckets. Other simple buckets are like, lack, learn, long for. What did we like? What did we lack? What did we learn? What did we long for? Alliteration. I love alliteration. It's so great. It helps you remember, right? And again, we're just creating some buckets, asking people to put ideas in different ones, and then discussing. It's just a different way of looking at things. The second option is to do mad, sad, glad. What made us mad, sad, and glad over the last sprint or two, whatever we're going through in the retrospective. So those are just two, they're like stop, start, and continue. They're not going to be a big lift for you to figure out, but they're just different ways of accessing people's ideas, which is what we want in a retrospective meeting. Okay, last thing for running a good retrospective. If you run out of ideas, if like stop, start, and continue and mad, sad, glad aren't doing it for you, there's an amazing book called Agile Retrospectives, which I will link to with this video. Go get it. It has so many brilliant ideas. I continue to go back to that book and find ways to access people's brains during retros. Totally go there. Last piece of advice about your retro, make sure it's actionable. Think of concrete action steps that you're going to take as a team to do what you discussed at the retrospective. Otherwise, you keep having the same arguments or the same complaints come up time and time again. It's not fun for anybody. It's very frustrating, in fact. So, action items with owners. So who on the team is going to take ownership of fixing a problem, finding a solution, whatever the issue is that the team brought up, somebody needs to own it. And then next retro, that's the initial topic of conversation. How are we doing on taking the steps that we agreed on during our last retro? Okay. So if your retros aren't happening, schedule them right now. Just go do it. If they are happening and they're not really pulling their weight, you can make them work harder, but it's just going to be a deliberate action you have to take. But do it. Your retros are there for you, there for the Agile teams to make things work better. So please, please, please have them. Lastly, if you are an Agile pilot, if you're one of the early teams adopting Agile marketing in your department, please, please, please document your retrospectives. Tell everybody else what you're talking about and what issues you're struggling with so that when they struggle with those same issues, they can come to you for advice. There may be things you need to leave in the room that are private to the team, and that's okay. But whatever you're comfortable documenting, this is an enormously powerful tool for the pilot to be able to create visibility around their early learnings to share with their colleagues. Okay, please let me know in the comments or shoot me an email. Let me know how your retros are going. If you've made some of these improvements, I'd love to hear about it. And I will be back with you in a week with another video to help you master marketing agility. Thank you for being here.